there's a really powerful flywheel that starts to happen when where you really work to understand what is the real problem a company have and how can you really fine tune AI to solve that problem. And then very, very powerful results emerge.
Hi, I'm Matt Egol, host of the CX and Culture Connection, the podcast for leaders looking to drive value by focusing on customer experience and culture together. I'm excited to talk today with Aaron Shapiro, who has been the founder and CEO of several high-growth companies. Aaron and I met when he was the CEO of Huge, a digital agency that he sold to IPG. And before that, Aaron was the founder and CEO of Silverpop, a marketing automation and SaaS company, which he sold to IBM. Aaron is currently focusing on two ventures. He's a busy guy. He's the chairman of product, which is positioned as, quote, the agency for the AI era. That's a really, really good positioning to have right now, as well as the founder and CEO of Day Forward, an innovative life insurance company. So thanks for joining the podcast today, Aaron.
Thanks for having me. It's good to see you again, Matt.
Likewise. I've always enjoyed collaborating. And fun fact is when I was a consultant, I used to work on client engagements. Often Aaron's team, his agency, would be the ones to have all the fun implementing them. And that's how we met.
Yes, I used to joke that Matt was our greatest salesperson we had. He would do these giant, incredibly amazing, brilliant strategy projects. And then the end of that would be hiring Huge. So we would always interlock at the intersection where he would set us up for all of this UX work. So we were always he's been
I noticed a pattern that Huge was winning a good share. So it was a good acquisition for IPG.
It definitely worked out for everyone.
And you even hired a number of the people from Booz. I noticed we had alumni over at Huge, so you had some good talent there too.
That's right. We had a whole army. And actually, at the start of my career, my very first job was at Booz in the media entertainment division.
Yeah, you were an intern in the practice. I ended up becoming a partner in, although we didn't overlap when you were an intern. I think you were a couple of years before me.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember my project was, should MTV have a website? Which is kind of comical that this would be an actual, consulting gig. I think it paints us a little bit for how old we are.
MTV, I guess I can say this now, was one of the clients I worked on. And it was funny. One project I worked on there was like their animation strategy and what should they do. So I guess I'm responsible in part, along with others, for them creating edgy animation that counter-programmed the news. So it was a fun engagement to work on years ago. As I mentioned in my intro, you worked on a lot of things and you've got a lot of sparks of ideas. What was your inspiration for launching product? Let's get started there.
So as you mentioned, I spent most of my career as founder and CEO of Huge, a good 15 or so years. And I was really fortunate during that period to see the whole growth of UX coming from this novelty where people didn't even know what it was. We couldn't even hire UX designers because they didn't exist, right? To something that was so mission critical to business over that period of time. And then I left Huge right before the pandemic and left and did stuff in other sectors that we'll talk about in the insurance industry. And then I started to look at the agency business again and what was happening in the state of UX and design and got really, really excited for the first time in years because of how transformative AI is and will be to customer experience and how much it impacts business in general. And I thought it'd be really powerful to start a new company that was really focused on helping companies understand AI from a UX perspective and really how to make AI really a mission critical driver for their business given this new landscape. And while I was thinking of this, a friend of mine, Chris Stemke, who used to work at me for Huge, approached me about starting an agency. And so I said, sure, it's a great idea. So he's kind of the really leading day-to-day operations. I'm serving as chairman and really doing a lot of the thought leadership around how digital is evolving with AI and what that means for marketers today.
AI is something we talk about often on the podcast and it's out there in the zeitgeist. But I personally think AI is having a huge impact on the way we generate insights, the way we generate content, the way we deliver personalized experiences, the way we drive continuous improvement. It's not just automation and analytics.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, when I think of AI, I think about it as, because AI can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, right? And actually, we first got interested in AI about a year before the whole ChatGPT thing blew up. And the way we think about it is that you could think about AI as in three broad buckets for marketers. The first one is what you alluded to, which is fundamentally it's the most powerful data analysis tool that's ever been invented, right? And so the ability to draw insights and make decisions as a result of those insights is truly transformative, and that drives a lot of different innovations and applications across many fields. And this has been widely discussed. The second general bucket is it drives the cost of content creation to zero, right? One day you and I don't have to do this. We could just have this all be like, Aaron and Matt's chatbots doing all this together. We can see this for images. We can see this for copy creation. It's only a matter of time before all content creation has zero variable cost. And that has massive implications for marketing and business in general. And the third bucket that we think about a lot is that it's really a new user experience, right? Chatbots have been around for a while. They've been terrible. But the idea that chatting, talking to a computer, having an intelligent agent do things on your behalf, these are all radically new radically new forms of human-computer interaction that I believe will transcend the way browsers and mobile devices have today, with a completely different paradigm, just as transformative as it was when social came aboard or mobile. And so when marketers think about what they have to do, and business executives, it's really about how do you have a strategy implementation plan that really leverages all three of these vectors for how AI transforms business.
Is this what you mean on your website when you say product helps you future-proof your business?
Absolutely. But it really goes beyond that. And in fact, when we think about future-proofing a business, one of the biggest things that AI does is that when you combine those three things, which is fantastic analytics, new user interfaces, and zero variable cost of content, you can start to create new types of software and services that automate things that previously were human-driven. And that's where things are very powerful. And what's interesting for a lot of the work we do at Product is that a lot of our work is not really consulting. It's actually building software and services that leverage AI, which in turn provide solutions to companies that wouldn't ordinarily be possible without AI in the mix. And the ability to move human labor to automated solutions is very transformative to businesses, and it's very transformative to marketing services.
What you're highlighting, I just want to play it back and amplify it for the audience, which is strategy and the way you do things, the way you innovate in business is increasingly around doing things and trying things and prototyping things instead of writing a document. So in the past, when I worked on strategy, we would come up with the strategy and then you'd brief someone and they'd come up with the creative and then they'd work on and it'd take a very long time to go from strategy to execution. Now what you can do is prototype as part of the strategy. You're combining the digital product expertise with the strategy and innovation and insights to do things and try things really rapidly. And what Aaron's got at Product is the leading practices and the leading approaches to do digital product as part of innovation.
That's right. And to couple that, it also goes to how services are provided to clients. For example, if you were to build Huge from scratch today, you wouldn't have 1,500 employees, which was the size of the firm when I left a few years back. Why is that? Because so much of the work that we used to do that was required human labor can now be done on an automated basis. And you can see a lot of examples of this that are happening in a lot of people's day-to-day lives related to business. For example, how many websites do companies need where in the old days you would hire a firm like Huge to design a site and build it and everything else, whereas today you could probably do something pretty close on Squarespace for a fraction of the cost and something that could be done in minutes. And you can see that movie played out in a lot of different dimensions that dramatically streamlines the efficiency of marketing services.
Yeah, and actually I can see the same thing in my own journey where I used to be a partner at Booz and then PwC and work on these larger engagements. And part of my motivation to launch JourneySpark Consulting is to help coach and collaborate with clients to help their teams do things at a fraction of the cost and much greater speed without having to work with big consulting firms. So I'm working on projects now where I'm delivering in 1/3 the time with 1/5 the number of people, a project that has, the same value as we used to do for orders of magnitude more cost.
That's right. We're seeing the same thing around for design and development, for technology, for software builds unrelated to UX. We're seeing a very similar phenomenon in advertising as well. The days of the creative, like the Don Draper, right, doing his big idea in the presentation, like like the carousel, all those famous stuff in Mad Men, and then you do this really expensive production shoot, and then you put it on TV, and you spend all this money. You don't even know it's going to work until millions of dollars are spent. Those days are rapidly disappearing. Instead, the model that's working more and more is AI tools, including things we've developed within product, that automate the creation of many, many different ideas. And then from those different ideas, you can test lots and lots of things inexpensively and then see which creative concepts work.
You don't worry that I'm competing with you, which I know you're not. Just like I used to work on stuff that would lead to opportunities for Huge in the past, what I'm really excited to do now is to help clients build a culture of experimentation, to help them drive new ways of working. And then the things that I'm working on can create lots of opportunities for companies like Product. And I'm really looking forward to introduce you and your company to clients so you can help them build that product capability and really scale a lot of the opportunities that I'm helping seed.
Yeah, likewise. And I'll give you another example for how things can start to get automated in dramatic ways. So we had a major media client approach us about a year ago, and they had a quiz that they have online. Like the New York Times, for example, they have a news quiz that comes out once a week. It's part of their casual games that drives a lot of their audience to the New York Times, things like Wordle and stuff like that. But this media company had a problem, which is that it was labor intensive to produce a quiz. You had to write all the questions separate from the technology and the coding. And it drove a lot of engagement, but they didn't have the editorial bandwidth to manage one quiz, no less their aspiration for doing lots of quizzes for different topics and different media properties that they had. So what we did is we pitched them, and we thought that's a perfect AI problem, right? You could train in a large language model to get extremely good at creating multiple choice questions from news articles and use that to auto-create quizzes that would normally be done by editors. So we actually built a tool to do just this. We built a full platform that we call RiverDrop, which combines all the software needed to run enterprise scale quizzes, which are things like authentication, tying into their CRM, analytics, all that kind of stuff, with everything that makes quizzes fun, leaderboards, sharing, all those kind of things. And then it's powered by with trained large language models that basically hit the media company's website, crawls all the articles relevant to the types of topics they want to create a quiz for, generates the quiz, and auto-publishes it. So a publisher now can publish hundreds of quizzes if they wanted to every day on lots of different topics on an automated basis, where before you couldn't logistically do that because of how much work it would have taken editors. It's been really successful. We're about to. It's in a public beta right now. We have several major media companies that are using it successfully, and I think it's a really great example of how AI enables new types of services and functionality and automation within companies. And I think that that's more and more of where this world is going. Is lots and lots of niche AI applications solving very specific automation tasks that really powerfully accelerate the company's velocity and the types of experiences they can provide.
There's a ton of use cases that will apply for what you're talking about, Aaron. I mean, in the media and entertainment space, obviously this resonates. There's a broad problem you talked about with the cost of content, or with the dimes for dollars problem, where the cost per thousand of advertising's come down and the companies have to create more and more content. That's a challenge for companies to create content at a price point that's low enough relative to their ability to monetize it. So they have to feed this pipe with tons and tons of content at a falling cost. So you're creating a solution that creates more for less. It creates a higher quality content at a lower price point. It allows them to meet that opportunity and optimize it.
Yep, that's exactly right. And I think so we're getting a lot of traction with this in the media entertainment space. And it's really the foundation of building a larger casual games platform for media companies. But I think that when you take this model we're seeing this in a lot of other applications within product. We're doing a very similar thing for advertising automation, which is a very similar kind of problem, right? We've seen this for other niches as well, especially within customer service and how call center responding to questions and help pages. We're starting to see this for how social media creation of social media can be automated from other content that the companies have. So there's a really powerful flywheel that starts to happen when you really work to understand what is the real problem a company have and how can you really fine tune AI to solve that problem, and then very, very powerful results emerge.
Two thoughts come to mind listening to this, Aaron. One is, in marketing and companies, experiences and brands are increasingly built through content experiences. And so you're at the forefront of that in the digital world where you're designing and building great user experiences that are content-based, that the brands increasingly get built through that as opposed to advertising. Advertising doesn't necessarily go away, but increasingly the advertising is activating the equity built up through experiences rather than the other way around.
Absolutely. And we're seeing that more and more of this trend, which is increasingly every brand is a media company. Individuals are becoming media companies as well, right? And the line between and as a result, there's an interesting ecosystem where every company is a content creator, every individual content creator, businesses are too, and then the monetization of that becomes a really interesting issue based on what the underlying business model of these companies are.
Yeah. Now in the marketing space, there's this trend towards more and more versions of the content that are more personalized. That's really what personalization is it doesn't have to get to one-to-one content. If you create hundreds of versions, it approximates true personalization. And what you're creating is a means to do that with AI that is highly relevant, and your cost of creating the content and the experience and the ability to test and learn with it is supercharged.
It's an interesting time in the media landscape where you have this, to your point, massive fragmentation where we're moving towards one-to-one communications. And then you have on the other extreme, these tentpole events, right? Like the Eras Tour, right? Which have massive scale beyond anything we've seen in history, and not much in the middle, right? It's this incredible, shift to the extremes in what our media consumption patterns have become.
Well, the more fragmented it gets, the more those live, highly emotive experiences become. It's a paradox. So you end up with this barbell where you get more and more fragmentation, but then the things that create that water cooler effect are actually even more valuable.
That's right.
Yeah. But everything in the middle is in no man's land.
Right. But, as a side note, what I find really fascinating about media now is I have three boys. They're, 16, 14, and 11. I look at their media consumption habits, right? Your kids are probably no different, right? Literally all three of them, zero scripted entertainment, zero, right? They have full access to it, no interest, right? Everything is social games or effectively reality videos created by individual creators, right? So I think it's really fascinating which is effectively very niche content, right? So it's interesting when you think about what happens 10 years from now when this generation becomes in their early 30s, 15 years from now, and they become the primary purchasers and drivers of our economy. That's going to be a massive shift in media consumption beyond anything that we've seen right now.
Well, you're going to see this even more. The brand is owned by the consumer, and even more of prosumers and people engaging around. I think the ability of a brand to build community is critical.
Yep, absolutely.
I have a concept that I introduced in my book called the CX and Culture Connection, called the Experience Collage Canvas. And I actually talked about this in some prior podcast episodes, like with Jim Keane, who used to lead digital at General Mills and then launched an agency called Fathom, and then Farren, Fahren. And then also later with Nitin Sher from Wevo. But the idea with Experience Collage is that you want to, my mom's an artist, so I love the art metaphor, that you want to think about filling the whole canvas, not just a corner of the canvas. And think of the bottom left of the canvas is the user experience, just functional benefits. The benefits of the product and service of functional benefits don't create as much of an emotional connection. You want to get to deeper meaning which is like the bottom right of the canvas. You go from product to experience beyond the product. How does it fit into your life? Like someone once said, holding up a basketball? What is this? Oh, it's a basketball. No, it's an hour with your son. That's the meaning,
That's
right?
great. Yep.
That was the CMO of Sports Authority, right? Like that's what the basketball is. You have to think about the emotional connection of the product. Or you want to get to sharing, which is an experience beyond yourself. That's the top left of the canvas. If you get to the top right, it's meaning and sharing. That's community. It's like good, better, best.
Model.
If you get all the way to filling out your experience collage canvas, you deliver the much deeper emotional connection. And one of the things I focus on at JourneySpark Consulting is helping people think about the customer journey and how to fill out the whole canvas.
Yep, makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. What you're doing at Product is filling out a way to deliver those experiences at scale with constant experimentation.
I think a corollary to a lot of this, when you think about a lot of this the experience is, if I think about how experience has changed over the last 20 years since I've been thinking about UX, a lot of experience is fundamental. A lot of good design is fundamentally just removing friction, right? How do you make it easier to buy, right? Getting to the one-click shop, easier to get the content that I want. It's all about easier, simpler, feeding into our inherent need of just removing laziness. And what makes AI exciting is that it gets to that next level, right? Where it's the more it knows about you and the more it can make inferences, it eliminates more of those steps. And, getting this mythical time where like whenever you think about something, it can automatically happen. And so I think the real power for brands, to your point, is if you combine frictionless with very compelling emotive storytelling, right? So there's a meaning beyond just getting this thing done, but there's a why that gives emotional fulfillment and creates a reason for share. That's really the connection that the most powerful brands in the world are doing.
One of the things I like to do thinking about a journey, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this given your agency background and how things are changing now with AI, is when you think about a customer journey, the peaks in the journey are where the emotions are most meaningful and memorable. And people remember, this is the way the brain works, like the way things people remember are those peaks because of the emotions, either the peaks or the last thing, right? But they literally tune everything else out. And those peaks in the where the emotions are strongest, increasingly you can actually measure what those emotions are and what's happening and spot it and drive improvement. So how do you think about AI now and how the advances and how we're able to better listen for emotion as well as actually create experiences with stronger emotion with the AI now? That's part of what makes AI appear sentient, is it actually projects emotion in the way it communicates with you now.
So the way we think about AI as part of the journey is twofold, which is the first piece is when back in the pre-AI days, we'd think about user experience. There was always this notion, that's a widely held notion of surprise and delight. How do you surprise and delight the consumer, right? But the way we really think about it is almost like a magic trick. Where's the magic, right? It's the wow. It's, oh my God, how did that possibly happen, right? It resonates now because actually my middle son, who will embarrass me for saying this, is actually an amateur magician who do like bar mitzvah gigs and things like that. So I've spent now too much time going to magic, like little magic things to like see all this stuff. But the principles are very, very similar. It's you don't know how something happened, but it happened, and your mind is kind of amazed, right? And that's the kind of thing that you have happen. I can give you a small example and that wow is what really pushes it over the top and gets people to fall in love with something. A small example for Riverdrop, right? What is the wow within Riverdrop? When let's say we're convincing a media company that you should use our product, you can explain all the rationality, but what's the wow? The wow is we type in a URL, right? Like, mattegol.com/blog, whatever it is. And we click create quiz. And all of a sudden, 5 seconds later, a quiz appears with questions from your blog automatically, right? It's like mind blowing. How did that possibly happen? Now we know how that happened. We talked about it earlier, right? But that connection where it's something happened that consumers couldn't figure out why, it's a magic trick, right? And that is what we would always strive for from the earliest stage of Huge, is to have that kind of amazement. And when you have that kind of amazement, consumers feel like they're part of this powerful experience that really creates that kind of connection. And so if you do that, and then you couple it with, and fundamentally, by the way, most of this wow moments are fundamentally talking about it. It's about speed. It's taking away steps that consumers are used to doing, right? It could be even small things, like you're in an airline, you're booking an airline reservation, and by default, it has your home city, right? By default. Now we take that for granted. But 10 years ago, it'd be like, oh my God, it knows that I'm from New York.
What you're highlighting is every experience delivers on one of three dimensions: better, faster, or cheaper, right? I call it the pathway to value. What's the long tent and the pole in the tent? Better, faster, or cheaper? And you're making choices about where to invest in the experience. And I actually have a diagnostic toolkit to help companies figure out, like, how aligned are they on their focus for better, faster, and cheaper? How aligned is your culture to better, faster, and cheaper? And then is, in the voice of the customer, is the experience you're delivering actually delivering on the promise for better, faster, and cheaper? There's 3 legs to that stool in the diagnostic toolkit, and that you can help accelerate your progress. What you're highlighting is that faster is gaining traction rapidly. A lot of companies when you use this diagnostic toolkit, what happens? A lot of companies say, we're really focused on better, but we need to put more focus into faster. So a lot of the investments they're making in CX are prioritizing how to get better at faster.
Yes. And it's very, very hard to convince companies who haven't drank the Kool-Aid to invest in faster, because rationally that seems like very trivial things, like, oh, who cares? They can do the pull down themselves. Or you see the amount of work involved to achieve faster is so significant from an engineering or data perspective that they don't want to bother, right? It's not glamorous, but those are the things that make great experiences truly special, right? You think about why Instagram became so big back in the day, or YouTube, right? It was fundamentally, they made a clunky process faster, right? It was Instagram, the fastest way to get it, snap a photo, get it online, right? That frictionless is what wins. It's funny you mentioned better, faster, cheaper, because we actually use the same exact phrase back in the day as well. And like that power for AI to drive that is really, really profound.
Yeah. And you can, once you know that, and by the way, there's not one way to be better, one way to be faster, one way to be cheaper. So you can actually think about, is better, more quality? Is it more innovative? Is it, there's different ways to be better. Is it going beyond the product, like we just talked about, and delivering a more deep experience? There are different ways to be faster. So you make some choices, and then you want to think about, well, how do I really deliver that in the customer experience? What's really cool about Riverdrop is it's better, faster, and cheaper all at once.
Yes. But what's interesting is that when we've done a lot of consumer research, and so many consumers will pay for faster, right? And they won't consciously pay for faster. Like if you say, this is $10, this is $15, but this one's quicker, what do I choose? Like, they'll rationally say, I'll go for the cheaper one. But if you look at user behavior, they consistently will pick faster. There's an old adage that for about 40% of products you can find on Amazon, you can find it cheaper elsewhere, right? Why do you go to Amazon? Because it's faster, right? That fundamentally wins. And you can see this across a lot of things. In fact, my other company, Day Forward, which is in the life insurance space, we consistently saw that people will buy life insurance that's more expensive if it's faster, because it's such a clunky process that if you can do it quicker, you win the battle, because they don't even bother to price comparison shop, and that's the secret. And the interesting corollary is that then you look at companies like the success of Shine, which I'm fascinated by, and then you have the opposite, right? People will pay because it's so much cheaper. They accept the fact that it is not faster. It is purposely slow and tortuously slow, but it's so cheap, they're willing to sacrifice speed, which is really a fascinating dynamic.
What you're highlighting is it's really hard in something like a B2B market to think about just the, quote, rational functional benefits, because human beings are involved in making decisions. And often the ease of doing business and all the interactions of all the speed bumps along the customer journey, and getting rid of those speed bumps, creates a more emotionally engaging experience. And I'm using that word intentional, emotional, because it's not just rational decision making. People feel better about an easy experience And then they become loyal, not because of the functional benefits alone, but because of how easy you made it.
Yeah, I can, to talk a little bit about Day Forward. So when I left Huge, I decided I wanted to do the same type of customer experience work, but for an industry and doing it as a startup as opposed to as a consultant. So I went through all of our clients and I said, which industry do we work in? Because at Huge, we worked about half of the Fortune 100. So we had visibility into virtually every industry. And I said to myself, which industry was most backwards in UX? And the two that came to mind were insurance and healthcare. So I wasn't a doctor. I looked at a lot of good healthcare ideas, but I wasn't a doctor. They all were a little too much burden for me personally. So I decided to focus on insurance. And within insurance, life insurance was by far the worst customer experience. If any of you if you've got life insurance or anyone else listening, it's typically a month, 4 to 6 week process. They give you a quote, you have to fill out an application. A doctor comes to your office, you get blood work, all this stuff. And then they tell you if you're approved for life insurance, 20% of the time you're not. So then you're annoyed. If you are approved, then most of the time they say, oh, they bait and switch you. They say, oh, sorry, the price is more expensive. You're not as healthy as we thought you would be. So then your price goes up. And at that point, you've been through this process so long, you're pissed and you hate the company, but you do it anyway. And that's the typical life insurance sales process. And about, 60% of America suffers through this. So we thought, wouldn't it be really interesting if we could create technology that solves that problem? Can we did the intellectual exercise of, can you make life insurance as easy to buy as a point and click, as like just, dropping something in your shopping cart? Now, once you get into it, it's never going to be that easy. And the quick reason is because once you own life insurance, the life insurance company cannot fire you. You must legally fulfill that policy for as long as you pay your premiums. So if I give you life insurance and you're a cancer patient about to die tomorrow, I'm going to lose a lot of money, right? So I have to go through underwriting. And so there's a bit of a trade-off, which is the more time I spend underwriting and learning about you, the less risky it is for me because I know all your medical secrets, but then it's going to take much more time. And if I do it, and therefore it could be cheaper, but it'll take forever. But if I underwrite you in no time, then it'll be really expensive to cover the risk that you're likely about to, kick the bucket. And that's the balancing act within the business. So we took this and we built best-in-class technology that streamlined the underwriting process. So it was as fast as possible to buy life insurance while still having responsible underwriting. And that's an important point because we wanted the underwriting to be good enough. And so we moved it from this 4 to 6 week process to something that could happen in minutes, including using modern data sources to eliminate the need in most cases for an actual medical checkup and exam, and really collapse the process. And we saw that with that frictionless process, not only could you drive a lot of sales, but people are willing to pay more money because it's so simple, they don't want to bother to go through the process elsewhere.
What you're highlighting for me, Aaron, is there's a lot to dive into there, but one thing is you're applying your experience at Huge and working with clients to help drive innovation in a space that's ripe for it, the insurance space. It reminds me of some other podcast guests. Like recently I had Shruti on, who was the digital experience lead at Amex and Citibank, and she launched a healthcare related business with others focused on the the care experience on site, like creating a much more of a minute clinic, like on site healthcare. So that's so you would actually love your healthcare experience, right? And there are other examples of other podcasts of people who've come from other industries and come into new industries and apply what they learn. And so if people want to check out more of those stories like that, I'd encourage them to go to cxandcultureconnection.com to see more of the episodes and to like and subscribe to the podcast, because you're going to hear more people like Aaron who share their stories of how they've applied what they learned into driving new innovation in the CX space, and maybe it'll spark some ideas for you.
And so just to fit up the Day Forward story, so the way, we started selling direct, we found that actually the software was so powerful that it was much more effective as a solution for traditional insurance carriers as well as brokers. And so that's where the company has gotten a lot of traction, is to be the underlying software that powers these transactions that are used by both by both insurance agents and brokers, as well as carriers to automate their business.
So, Day Forward, I imagine, has gone through some pivots, some evolution where you've learned some things along the way. What are some of the ways that you've evolved the approach for Day Forward as you've gotten further into the success of launching the business?
I think the biggest thing that we learned was when we first launched the company, we thought we would be purely direct to consumer. And what we learned from that was that there is a massive direct to consumer opportunity within the space, but a lot of people really want a human personal touch. They want to talk to an agent, an expert. They want to understand their options, what type of policy is right for them, all these kind of things. And so for a segment of the population, you could get them buying with no humans, but a very large percentage of the audience of the general market will always want to talk to somebody. And that really drove our insight that our software is much more powerful. Instead of focusing on the smaller self-serve market, is to tailor the software for the broader market that's going to be human assisted and really empower that in a way that's very frictionless. So we think of it as, the agent, instead of taking 6 weeks to make that sale, they can now make a sale in a single conversation and close that transaction. And that's still very powerful and transformative, but it includes the human in the mix. And it's a good reminder that for all of us who grew up in tech, is that humans are not fully replaceable by the machines, right? There are always certain types of consultative work and advisory work that humans are always going to be needed as part of the mix. And that's okay. And that's going to be part of a lot of different types of business transactions.
I've been working with a consumer electronics retailer, Aaron, that what's really reason I thought of this is, this is a space that you think of like Amazon and others where you just use e-commerce to buy what you need. And increasingly you're going to engage in digital self-service and buy what you need. Why do you need the expertise of salespeople? Now, Best Buy's competed by getting you to want to interact with their blue shirts in their store and their home advisors and things. So that's the yin to the yang, is that they compete through the knowledge of the people and the culture of how the people show up. And if you think of it, though, from there's a lot of people out there who will go engage in digital content and then just want to talk to somebody, but you can't do that. You don't necessarily want to go to the store to talk to somebody, right? So now what I worked on with this client is they've got people in the call center and people using chat, and they actually end up with a lot of people who go to Amazon and then talk to their people because the people want to talk to somebody. And so what we were working on is, how do you think about the micro journey of, like, whether it's a 6-minute conversation or a 1-hour conversation, what are the peaks and valleys in those journeys? And how do we actually deliver an experience that we're leveraging technology and data to enable the people on the phone or in the chat, but understand those peak moments, what they're occurring, what emotions are they feeling? In this particular example, people either had a problem or a project. So let's stick with a project for a minute. The journey was, you first want people to feel relaxed, then you want them to feel confident, then you want them to feel optimistic. So there's a crescendo of the emotions through the experience. But if they don't feel relaxed in the first few minutes, they get annoyed and it gets combative. And so you first have to get people to calm down. Then you want to get them to feel confident. You're asking the right questions. You're on their side. You're not trying to sell them. Then you want them to feel optimistic leaving the call about they're going to get a great experience and be able to engage in the category, making the right decision. And if you get those three things right, you had an 80% correlation with the business outcome you want.
Yep, that's great.
Right?
I love it.
And I think this is an opportunity that's ripe in a lot of industries, is how do you combine that digital and human-to-human experience in a way that the human-to-human one is actually often what creates the emotional connection.
Yep, absolutely. Especially think about all the early internet stories of the demise of stores, and certainly plenty of stores have gone away, right? But at the same time, we all love shopping. I don't like shopping, but we as humans, we all love going to stores, right? Getting the advice, the social aspect of it, getting the advice of the salespeople, to your point. That's never going to go away, but the ability for tech to empower that is really, really profound. And we see that, and that's what we saw at Day Forward in the financial advisory space. Financial advisors, insurance agents, all financial professionals are not going away. Even though everyone can go on Schwab or Robinhood and buy it all themselves, there's still a place for expert advice. but the ability to use technology to empower that expert advice so it's better, and that the expert advice is integrated with it within a digital journey is very, very transformative for many organizations.
So, you've been through a number of you've been a founder successfully multiple times. How do you think about the role of experience and culture? I must bring it to culture for a minute. The way you work on things, the way people collaborate, like how do you get from that early stage to larger without losing what made you special?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, candidly, it's really hard in the era of remote work. And I've actually, both of these companies grew up during this pandemic, post-pandemic era, heavily remote. And honestly, it's not a great way to build companies. It's very, very hard to build internal culture when everyone is not face-to-face interaction. And I also think the quality of work is not as good. So I actually hope that we're at a moment in time where I think we're going to start to shift more to in-person, much more in-person as opposed to remote, because of the company's ability to build that kind of culture that consistently allows organizations to grow. Huge had a very, very strong culture and a strong culture is fantastic for a few reasons. I find that if you have a good culture, what a culture really does is it teaches people a way to think. If you have a good culture, you need fewer rules because people will know that based on this culture, they will make the right decision because it's culturally in sync. And then therefore you can be less bureaucratic and more freedom to be creative.
The informal ends up trumping the formal.
That's right, because they'll do the right thing. And so we spend a lot of time and we're very scientific about how to build the culture and nurture it and keep it consistent. It was one of my biggest jobs as CEO as we went through this hyper growth phase. And it's so many small things, but if you get it right, it does wonders for retention, for the brand. To your point, culture becomes the brand. They become synonymous with each other.
Well, I think of there being two ways that culture impacts the customer experience. The CX and culture connection. One is direct, the other is indirect. The direct way is how your people show up in those human-to-human experiences. And like we've been talking about, you can actually think about what are the behaviors you want of your people in those peak moments that the people who are really successful do naturally. And then how do you spread that to others to get them doing, and how do you use the data and the technology and the tools to enable them to do that more regularly, right? To both not just what they see on screen, but the way you use customer listening to give them feedback on how they did, right? So there's things you can do to improve the direct experience that companies like Ritz-Carlton and Huge get right in their day-to-day work, and your Netflix, the internal informal side of it. I recently had the head of CX for Southwest on the podcast. So like they really get that right. The employee experience delivers the customer experience. The indirect side is how your people collaborate to work on things. So I think that's more what you were talking about at Huge, is the way people show up, the way they think. So the behaviors, again, drive your indirect experience. So as a CEO, you were top down driving focus on the right behaviors to drive that culture.
Yeah, it's a great point. And your point about culture related to customer experience, that even applied within Huge to how we dealt with clients, right? Part of our culture was hands-on, all about the work, no bureaucracy, no 50-person teams you're paying for. And that happened because it started from the top. I personally was hands-on with projects. You and I would go to, how many client meetings do you and I go to, right? We're in the trenches, right? And when we had a rule that if you're at a meeting and you have nothing to say, you should not be at the meeting, right? And those kind of cultural components not only made our work better, but it gave the image to our clients, which in turn enhanced the brand and then got more clients and got more employees wanting to work for us and kind of fed this virtual circle. It's funny you talk about this because I was thinking the other day, there was my wife mentioned this new restaurant we should go to in our neighborhood that she heard about. And so I went to Google and you go to the reviews and like everyone, you click on like the one to see all the bad reviews. And I noticed I was reading all the reviews. Fortunately, there weren't that many, so we'll try the restaurant. But what I found funny was that basically every single one-star review was not about the food. It was about the service. It was a waiter who was annoyed about something. And then I started, as a curiosity, doing a very unscientific survey of other restaurants and their one-star reviews. And it was the same pattern, that virtually all of the negative reviews were people pissed off about customer service. And so it's a small example of what you're saying, which is that what impacted the brand was not the quality of the food. It was entirely the culture and how it impacted the employees and how those employees treated their customers.
Yeah, I think that, the companies that do this really well are, they're phygital. They have a physical and a digital experience, and they have human-to-human experiences that really drive the brand. So your employee experience is key to delivering on your brand promise.
That's right.
Yeah. So, we could go on for hours. I really enjoy our conversations. You've sparked a lot of great ideas for me. I just, in wrapping up, are there any, closing advice or thoughts or for the audience about things that they can do to take advantage of some of the things that we talked about today?
I think the biggest thing I would encourage people to do is to explore and experiment. I believe that we're at the second inning of a massive revolution that's going to be bigger than the mobile social revolutions that we had before. You look at business, technology, how we interact with the world 10 years from now. It's going to feel 2025 is going to feel as dated as what 1995. What we all think about that was like, and the corollary is it's a really exciting time. Certainly, we have a lot of challenges in this world, but if you look at what's happening in business innovation, we're at a very, very exciting time and the start of a chapter. And the best way that people can take advantage of this is try new things, experiment, play with these tools, and just take a risk, go for it.
So I would encourage the audience, if this sparked some ideas for you about how you can, like, if you go back to how you can use AI to drive change in your business, talk to product about, reach out to Aaron and really think about how can you drive really a transformational value in your business, like they did with quizzes, and find other use cases where you can apply AI to hit his three things he talked about making it, better UX, cheaper, and changing the content. Like, you can really ideate and they'll be a partner for you for making this strategy real, actually helping experiment and do things that are real fast.
Thank you. And for those of you in the audience, my corollary plug is Matt is the best strategist I've ever worked with in 20 years. So anyone will be in good hands with having Matt think through his.
Thank you. Well, I'm looking forward to collaborating with a number of companies for how they can take advantage of these opportunities and really build an ideate, test, scale approach with new cultures where product can be an innovation partner for them. It's been a lot of fun, Aaron, and audience, I hope this sparked some great ideas for you. I know it did for me.
Thanks, Matt, for having me. It's always a lot of fun to chat and catch up.
Thanks, Aaron.